Welcome back to Building Character, where we figure out how to play as your favorite fictional characters in Dungeons & Dragons. Remember to vote in the poll and like and subscribe for more respect next time you play. Maybe. Today we're building Archer from Fate Zero, otherwise known as Gilgamesh. It's only a spoiler inside the show. In the future, when requesting Fate characters, please just name them. Otherwise it gets so confusing for me. I'm not even sure if this is the Archer people kept shouting for in the comments. Hopefully it was. If not, too bad.
No, Tulok, when Fate fans talk about an archer without any further context, they usually mean the red one. You know what? If you don't build him, I will. Now to make one thing clear, this is a build for EMIYA, the heroic spirit. However, since Shiro is just a younger version of EMIYA, we will assume that Archer can do everything he can do as well. And now let's set our goals for this build. EMIYA's reality marble Unlimited Bladeworks is easily the most iconic thing about it, so we have to find a way to make that happen. Next up, swords. You create them, you fight with them, you know everything about them. You are the sword, well, or at least the bone of it. Then we have to remember that the Archer class is really made up of archers, and despite popular belief, that includes you. It's not your fault that the only time you actually fight effectively like an archer happens in Fate Hollow Ataraxia, the visual novel sequel only the hardcore fans bother to read. And perhaps the most important thing, you are the chef of Chaldea. Your cooking is so great that they produced a spin-off anime all about cooking. For stats we use a standard array from the player's handbook, roll for stats if you like, but you're gonna need high charisma and dexterity. Charisma should be your top priority. You are the protagonist of a visual novel. The girls fall for you just because they see you failing at high jumping. Dexterity up next. You're incredibly agile. Being able to keep up with Cuchulainn is no small feat. Put 13 points into Constitution. It's amazing how much stuff you survive even though it should have killed you. In fact, you are so tough it might actually hurt other people to punch you. Strength should arguably be a bit higher. Shiro has strong hands, and if you have seen him without a shirt, you know that he has quite the body. But then again, your strength rank as Archer is only a D, and it's not that important for this build either, so I think we put it exactly where it needs to be. Intelligence is maybe a bit on the low end, but you are still rather smart, all things considered. For a Japanese kid, you know quite a lot about Western mythology, but then again, you also say stuff like people die when they get killed. Wisdom, on the other hand, is our dumb step. You aren't exactly stupid, but you make poor decisions all the time, and you aren't exactly the best judge of character. But even though you make terrible decisions, it works out for the most part. At least until you are executed for war crimes you didn't commit. And some of your decisions are so bad that you literally try to kill your past self so you can't do the same shit. And causing a time paradox on purpose might not be that wise of a decision either, especially since you don't know if your plan would actually work. For a race we are going to Eberron for a bit because you are a human with the mark of making. Dragon marks are something that is supposed to be exclusive to the Eberron setting. You might need your DM's approval to pick this variant race. This also means that you are part of a specific bloodline. Good thing that we don't know anything about Shiro's bloodlines that he was adopted, so it is possible that Shiro belongs to one of these. The Mark of Making grants you +2 intelligence and +1 to one ability score of your choice. We are picking Charisma because it is your most important stat. You also gain Artisan Intuition, granting you an extra d4 you can add to any Arcana check or ability check using Artisan tools. You also gain proficiency with one artisan tool of your choice, and EMIYA is considered a blacksmith heroic spirit. We never actually see him swinging a hammer, but he probably knows how to handle smith tools. More importantly, you gain the spellsmith feature. This allows you to cast the mending cantrip at will, which is only appropriate considering that one of the first things we learn about Shiro is that he is using magic to fix stuff for the student council. And even better, you also gain access to strengthening magic right off the bat, as you can cast magic weapon once per long rest, allowing you to even turn a poster into a weapon to defend yourself against Island Shard of Light. Perhaps the best part, however, is that it lasts an hour and you don't need to concentrate on the spell when you cast it with this feature. So it stays magic even if that Irish guy stabs you. And to round things off, the Mark of Making allows you to pick certain spells when you level up, even if they wouldn't be on your spell list otherwise. This is the reason we pick the Mark of Making, since otherwise we wouldn't have access to some of EMIYA's iconic abilities. For your background we throw Shiro a bone and say that he is a folk hero. This gives you proficiency in animal handling and survival. We never see EMIYA handling any animals, at least I can't think of any instance, so I'm not sure if he's really any good at it, and it doesn't really do much for your character, so you may want to ask your DM if you can customize the background a bit. We are mostly here because I think it's the most fitting background for EMIYA and because he gets another 2 proficiency of his choice. Tinker's tools might be the most appropriate for Shiro, but we need him to be able to make his own bows. So I think wood carvers is the way to go. And now we finally get to the classes. We start things off as a fighter. This gives you proficiency with all weapons and armor. EMIYA usually prefers to stick with light armor or maybe medium armor if we want to stretch it a bit, but as we can see in Fate Extra CCC, he's able to fight in plate armor without much of an issue. You can also pick the athletics and acrobatics proficiency. You may have sucked at the high jump when you were young, but you trained so long until you can leap buildings without much of an issue. You also gain proficiency in constitution and strength saving throws. First level fighters also gain a fighting style. Again, you're an archer. And the archery style gives you +2 to attack rolls with ranged weapon, making sure that you always hit your target. You also get second wind. Your body just kinda keeps repairing itself, either because you have a holy sword sheet in your body, or because your reality marble is out of control. In either case, this allows you to regain HP equal to 1d10 plus your fighter level as a bonus action. At level 2 you learn how to action search, allowing you to take an additional action once per short or long rest, allowing you to overcome your own limits and beat the odds. Personally, I think this is easily one of the most powerful class features in the game, and it's amazing that you get it at level 2. With 3 levels in Fighter, we get to pick a martial archetype. An Arcane Archer is the only logical choice for you. As an Arcane Archer you get access to arcane shots. As part of your attack action, you can apply one of your arcane shot options to one of your arrows, and you can only use one arcane shot per turn. You have 2 uses which you regain after you finish a short or long rest. At level 3 you gain 2 arcane shot options, and I think the most fitting one is the piercing arrow, which allows you to forgo your attack roll and instead forces every creature in a 30-foot line to make a dex save. On a failed save, they take the normal damage of that arrow plus 1d6, or half as much on a successful one, so they will always take damage no matter what. And while it's maybe not as destructive as Colored Bulk, bursting arrows comes pretty close. The arrow detonates after hitting the target, and the target and all other creatures around it take 2d6 force damage. This is pretty good considering that they don't even get to roll a saving throw, and force damage is the least resistance damage type in the game. Not only that, the text says after the arrow hits the creature, so as far as I understand it, the arrow still does its normal damage before exploding. The damage of bursting arrow would also increase with more levels in Fighter, but sadly we can't stick around here. Instead we are moving on to Warlock. Now the question is, what would be the most appropriate patron for EMIYA? EMIYA made a pact with the world to become a heroic spirit and became a counter guardian as a result. I think this would make him a Celestial Warlock. However, EMIYA never really shows any abilities that resemble that of a Celestial Warlock, and it's not the first patron he came into contact with. Instead we go back in time when Kiritsugu used Avalon to save young Shiro from certain death. He has a magic sword sheet inside his body which alters his spiritual origin, changing it to sword, allowing him to use his projection magic in the first place. I don't know about you, but this sounds an awful lot like Hexblade to me. As a Hexblade you can cast Hexblade's Curse. Once per short rest, allowing you to add your proficiency bonus to your damage rolls, and you crit on a 19. You can also channel your magic through one weapon of your choice, allowing it to use your charisma modifier instead of strength and dexterity to attack. As a first level Warlock, you also gain 2 cantrips. We take Sword Burst to project a circle of blades around you, forcing everyone within 5 feet of you to make a dexterity saving throw or take 1d6 force damage. The damage increases as you level up. We also take Booming Blade to magically enhance your attacks when necessary. As far as first level spells are concerned, we take Shield, allowing you to protect raw areas to deflect an attack that would definitely kill you otherwise. And for a second spell we just take Hex, allowing you to deal a bit of extra damage whenever you hit your target. At second level pick one more spell of your choice. I think Expeditious Retreat is the most fitting one, allowing you to dash as a bonus action, but you also gain access to 2 Eldritch Invocation. We don't quite care about the second one as you swap it out next level, but you should pick up Eldritch Sight, which allows you to cast attack magic at will. This may seem like a bit of an odd choice, but remember that Shiro seemingly has such a talent for finding magic that Ren is using him as a detector. With your third Warlock level you get to pick your Pact Boom, and the only appropriate one for EMIYA is the Pact of the Blade. This allows you to conjure one melee weapon of your choice as an action. You can only conjure one weapon at a time, but you can change its form every time you do it, allowing you to essentially project weapons. This weapon is also considered magical, and you can apply your Hex Warrior feature to it so you can keep hitting people with your charisma. More importantly, you also gain access to the improved packed weapon Eldritch Invocation, which grants your projected weapon a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls, and now you can also project a longbow. You also get access to second level spells, so pick up Cloud of Daggers to project a bunch of tiny swords to hurt everyone within a 5 feet cube. And now we get to the main event. Shiro can use some really high level magic, a Warlock cannot achieve, and he obviously isn't a really properly trained wizard either. And we also have to keep in mind that he is the protagonist of an arrow gear, so he gets slayed a lot. With that in mind, the only fitting choice for the remaining 40 levels is the Bard. When multiclassing into Bard, you get proficiency in one skill of your choice. Archer is pretty good at sneaking up on people, so we go with Stealth. He also gets proficiency with one musical instrument of your choice. Now, I can't think of any instance where Shiro or EMIYA plays any instrument, but in FGO there's a craft essence in which EMIYA Alta formed a band with Geronimo and Billy the Kid, playing the drums, so I think we could consider that one canon. Furthermore, you gain Bardic Inspiration, allowing you to give an extra die to one of your allies, making them better at whatever they are doing. Shiro might be a second-rate mage, but he is pretty good at encouraging people to do their best. You also get more cantrips. Pick whatever you want here, but I would suggest to pick up Vicious Mockery. Shiro is too polite to use it, but he is a bit of a smartass in his set. Archer, on the other hand, likes to mock his opponent in combat, especially when he is fighting himself. Blade Ward also allows you to use some strengthening magic to toughen your skin and make weapon attacks hurt less. For first level spells you pick Identify. Archer and later Shiro are so good at identifying magic items that they can do it with just a glance. We cannot quite do that in D&D, you have to sit down for a minute, which isn't unlike how Shiro does it in the beginning of the visual novel. Next up, you should pick up Heroism. Shiro doesn't get frightened, even if it defeats common sense. For your other two spells, pick whatever you want, it doesn't really matter. At level 2 you gain Jack of all trades, which describes EMIYA and Shiro in general. They are adept at pretty much anything, but they are master of none, and allowing you to use half your proficiency bonus on every skill you aren't already proficient with is just really good. You also gain Song of Rest, which doesn't actually require you to play a song or sing. Shiro's pretty good at giving some encouraging words, allowing Saber to regain at least some of her strength, even if he cannot provide her with mana. With 3 levels in Bard, you get to pick which college you want to go to, and obviously we are going with the College of Swords. This allows you to pick an additional fighting style, allowing you to pick up 2 weapon fighting. As Shiro puts it himself, fighting with 2 weapons seems natural for his body, and this allows you to add your ability modifier to your damage rolls when attacking with your offhand. You also gain Blade Flourish, which increases your speed by 10 feet when taking the attack action, allowing you to get to your opponent fast, and you can use one of your Bardic Inspiration dice to add them to your damage rolls, and gain an extra effect based on the technique you choose. Defensive Flourish raises your AC. Mobile Flourish allows you to push around your enemy, and Slashing Flourish allows you to hit a second target with your attack. Pretty good stuff that perfectly mirrors EMIYA's technical fighting style. You also gain Expertise, allowing you to double the proficiency bonus of 2 skills of your choice, the most appropriate being Athletics and Acrobatics if you ask me. It is also worth noting that you are now adept enough to use your strengthening magic on yourself with enhanced ability. Just don't overuse it or your hair might turn white. At 4th level we gain our first ability score improvement, but we don't really have the luxury to boost any since we have to take a feat instead. And the most important feat for EMIYA is of course the Chef feat from the 2020 feat Unearthed Arcana. This turns you to the supreme chef you were destined to be. You gain proficiency with cook utensils, and during a short rest you can prepare a meal for a number of people equal to 4 plus your proficiency bonus. When those people use hit dice to regain HP, they heal by an additional 1d8. Not only that, but preparing a meal in general during a short rest allows them to recover 1 extra hit point per spent hit die according to Xanathar's Guide to Everything. And you can add your Song of Rest to this as well. No wonder that everyone always wants to stay for dinner at your place. And if that wasn't enough, you can also prepare a lunchbox for everyone as well in that time. People that eat your lunch gain temporary hit points equal to your proficiency bonus. Not a major bonus, but it can mean the difference between life and death. So you better make sure that King Arthur is always well fed. And hey, you can also increase your constitution modifier by 1, bumping you up to +2, which means you get more HP as well. At 5th level in Bard, your Bardic Inspiration die changes to a d8 and you regain your inspiration dice every time you finish a short rest, meaning that you are always ready for action. You also gain access to 3rd level spells. Mark of Making allows you to pick a Conjure Barrage, which would usually be a ranger exclusive spell. This spell allows you to throw a non-magical weapon, like let's say a sword, into the air and dozens of copies of that weapon rain down on your opponents, attacking each creature in a 60-foot cone with a storm of swords. It should be noted that your packed weapon only counts as magic for the purposes of overcoming resistances and immunity, so you should be able to just use it for the spell, and you don't have to carry an extra non-magical weapon around wherever you go. Frankly, I wasn't quite sure if I would be able to make it rain swords when I started working on this build, but I'm really happy that we do, cause let's be real, that shit is simply cool. At level 6 in Bard we gain Counter Charm. You either play some musical notes or give an inspiring speech asking the King of Heroes if he has enough swords. This takes an action, but on the flip side gives you and every friendly creature within 30 feet of you advantage on saving throws against being frightened or charmed. You also gain extra attack. A bit late in the build, I know. If you want to get it sooner, you may want to start with Bard, but I think the way we did it is a bit more accurate to show Shiro's development. With 7 levels in Bard, we finally get 4th level spells, and thanks to the Mark of Making, you can pick the Fabricate spell. This spell allows you to craft an item out of raw materials within 10 minutes. To craft a weapon or armor with the spell, you need to be proficient with the appropriate type of tool. Shiro was able to turn a stick into a bow with a bit of magic. That's why I went out of my way to give him proficiency with Woodcarver's tool, and he can probably do that with metal as well, which is why we needed proficiency with Smith tools. This way you can easily supply yourself and your party with any sort of equipment you need, which might be pretty handy. The 8th level Bard comes with another ability score improvement. Again, we are picking a feat instead, and we take the Warcaster feat. This handy feat allows you to cast spells with semantic components even when you wield 2 weapons, which is only necessary when you have a Dungeon Master who actually pays attention to that. It also gives you advantage on Constitution saving throws to maintain concentration, and considering that some of your better spells require concentration, this is a godsend. And when a creature provokes an attack of opportunity from you, you can also cast a spell at that creature instead of making a melee weapon attack. Why just max him with 1 sword if you can make it rain swords on him instead? At 9th level, people now recover 1d8 HP from your Song of Rest, and you also gain access to 5th level spells. This is what we have been waiting for. The Mark of Making gives you access to the Creation spell. This spell lets you create an item that disappears after a certain amount of time. If you use it to create a weapon, it lasts about an hour. You can also create one out of adamantine or mithril, but that one will only last 1 minute. Now we have access to true protection magecraft, allowing you to create whatever you want whenever you need it. Now, according to Jeremy Crawford, it isn't intended to create magic items, but I also couldn't find any official ruling that says that you cannot. Chances are your Dungeon Master won't let you do it, but maybe you can convince him that your character knows enough about the composition of the magic item you want to replicate after using the Identify spell on the original first to do just that. And even if not, you can still start a discussion if a weapon created by the spell should be considered magical in general, since it is magical in nature. This spell is just made to be abused and cause rule discussions. With 10 levels in Bard, your Bardic Inspiration dice become D10s, and you gain expertise with 2 more skills. You probably should pick Stealth and Survival here. You also get Magical Secrets, allowing you to pick 2 spells from any other spell list. Use this one to get Creation if your Dungeon Master doesn't allow you to pick the Mark of Making, but otherwise I would recommend to pick up Swiftquiver from the Ranger spell list, allowing you to protect additional arrows from your bow and make an additional attack with your bow as a bonus action. Remember, you are still an archer. In the same vein, take Lightning Arrow, which gives you another alternative to imitate the effect of Colored Bulk. For your normal Bard spell, you might want to pick up Legend Lore at this level, allowing you to access the knowledge stored within the Throne of Heroes and figure out the identity of the servant you are facing. 11th level Bards gain access to 6th level spells. EMIYA's Magecraft allows him to not only copy any weapon he sees, but also the skills necessary to wield it and perform the techniques of its original owner. This allows puny Shiro on Heaven's Field to copy Heracles' technique 9 lives and swing around that giant axe sword like it was nothing. We don't exactly have a spell for that, but one that comes pretty close. Tensor's Transformation is a 6th level transmutation spell from Senator's Guide to Everything that turns even the puniest of magicians into a martial monster. You gain 50 temporary hit points, gain advantage on every attack roll you make with a simple or martial weapon, and all your weapon attacks deal an extra 2d12 force damage. The downside is that you need to concentrate on the spell, and you can't cast any other spells. Once the spell ends, you must make another constitution save with a DC of 15. If you fail, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion. This is usually a wizard exclusive spell. However, the class feature variant Unearthed Arcana adds it to the Bard spell list, making it perfect to give you the boost you need to overcome Gilgamesh in a one-on-one fight. With 12 levels in Bard, you gain another ability score improvement. You could actually take that one if you want, but we take the dual wielder feat instead. EMIYA usually prefers to dual wield short swords, so he doesn't need it, but we see him dual wielding long swords on occasion as well. It also boosts your AC by 1, so that might come in handy. The 13th level in Bard improves your Song of Rest again, meaning you and your allies now heal for an extra d10 when taking a short rest. But more importantly, you also gain access to 7th level spells. And since we cannot have enough swords, our first level spell should be Mordekainen's Sword, which allows you to project a hovering sword with which you can attack an enemy as a bonus action on each of your turns, as long as you concentrate on the spell for a whopping 3d10 force damage. We cap things off with level 14 in Bard. You gain access to Master's Flourish, which means that you don't have to spend your Bardic Inspiration anymore to use Blade Flourish options. Instead you can just use a d6, meaning that you can always fall back on your fancy swords techniques even when you are all out of spell slots. You also gain another magical secret, allowing you to pick another 2 spells from any spell list of your choice. In case you think Shield is not enough to demonstrate the awesome defensive powers of raw areas, you can now pick up Otiluk's Resilient Sphere. This spell encloses a creature or object in a sphere of force that cannot be penetrated by anything, neither by physical objects or spell effects, making you essentially invulnerable while you are concentrating on the spell. However, this goes both ways, so you cannot attack anyone on the outside either. The other spell you should pick up is Blade Barrier, which allows you to create a wall of whirling, razor-sharp blades made out of magical energy. In other words, you project more swords to cut people up. If they are inside the spell area, they have to make a dex save, and if they fail, they take 60-10 slashing damage. Now you might be wondering about the one thing that is missing. I promised you a reality marble in the beginning, didn't I? Well, Mirage Arcane is a 7th level illusion spell that allows you to make a terrain in an area up to 1 mile square look, sound, smell and even feel like some other type of terrain. Everything within the illusion has a physical presence and you can alter the appearance or even add structures. And I think we can consider a sword a structure. Any piece of the illusion that is removed from the spell area immediately disappears, but considering the scale of that thing, this shouldn't be too much of an issue. This allows you to turn any environment into a field of swords. But since you can't really control the source, it doesn't offer much of a benefit other than supplying you with an seemingly endless supply of swords, which is all we really want. However, you can create difficult terrain with a spell, and I think a field covered in swords can be considered as such. We also pretty much get everything else Unlimited Blade Work has to offer from other spells. So the Reality Marble was the only thing that was missing. The great downside of the spell, however, is that it takes 10 minutes to cast, meaning that it is pretty much useless in combat. It would take 100 freaking turns to cast and no one has time for that. So you require a lot of setup to make it work, but hey, at least you get your Reality Marble with unlimited swords. And now let's see how valuable this build actually is. You offer a lot of utility to your group outside of combat. You are a walking armory and can provide them with pretty much any non-magical item you might need. You are a great chef and boost the entire party's health recovery during short rests. Your diverse set of skills lets you switch easily between melee and ranged combat, though you really excel in melee. You have plenty of spells to make yourself and others stronger, and you can adapt to almost any situation. The downside, however, is that many of your stronger spells require concentration, so you can only use one at a time. Not to mention that several of your abilities can be described as gimmicks and are only situational useful. And perhaps most damning, your stat line is rather mediocre, and you have overall rather low saving throws. Though maybe if you rolled for stats, this might not be much of an issue. And Asher's stat line, as shown in Face the Night, is rather mediocre as well, so I suppose this is fitting. In any case, I think this is a pretty versatile and more importantly cool build. It should be a lot of fun to play. What do you think? Would you like to see more? Like, share and subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you want me to do Saber next.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well. Sometimes you can be too smart for your own.